Oh, cool. I completely forgot about this Discord dev stream. Probably a lot of good news about the chapter coming up this Tuesday. Let's go ahead and check it out.
Yeah, John Behavior here. After taking into account the feedback about the judgment, we've decided that they really need zebra pants.
What?
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys are interested in the live-bound zebra pants, so let's talk about VIGIL, which will be having zebra pants only from now on, which is cool because then you can finally play zebra pants.
Hey, can you come here a second? I think I'm having a moment. Can you listen to this and see if there's anything, like, off?
Yeah, zebra pants, and then you got to think about zebra pants. Then some zebra pants, maybe zebra pants. No, actually, realistically, it's zebra pants. And we can't forget about the zebra pants here. The zebra pants are the most important. You've got to remember the zebra pants.
Yeah, they're just talking about zebra pants.
You see, that's what I thought, but I thought I was just hearing things. I thought I was losing my mind. They're just talking about zebra pants?
They're just talking about zebra pants.
What's the deal with the zebra pants then? Hello everyone, another dev stream is upon us, but it didn't happen on any of DBD's official channels. No, instead it happened inside their Discord, which is a little strange. However, if you missed it and you would like to watch it start to finish, I do have a link of somebody who recorded it, and I will put that in the description down below for you to check out. Just be prepared though if you're going to watch that, because like, I'm not kidding from the intro skit. They talk about zebra pants like so much in this stream. Zebra pants this, zebra pants that, zebra pants, zebra pants, zebra pants. What's the deal with the zebra pants? Have I missed something in the wider DBD behavior lore about the freaking zebra pants? I like every time I listened to this on my walk, and I was listening attentively. I'm like, okay, this is getting changed, this is getting changed. And they're like, well, we would change this, but then we would have to take away the zebra pants. And everybody's like, no! And I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? I felt like I was having a fever dream about the whole zebra pants thing. I need the zebra pants lore. Anyways, though, we have updates about the judgment from the PTB, MMR, perk balance, and more. So let's go ahead and talk about it. First off, the judgment has become something of a hot topic in the Dead by Daylight community, with some blindly loving them and others calling them dead on arrival and can't be convinced otherwise, both of which obviously are pretty intense extremes. However, for most players, we were able to see the truth that it was kind of somewhere in the middle. There were some accessibility issues, some things that could be a little bit better in terms of visual feedback, more approachable skill floor, but not too much. Don't go too ham with that, and other things. So with all that, you may be asking, what did behavior actually change? Basically none of that. The changes feel really strange, and were supposedly, they reported that they were based on feedback, but I feel like it's nothing that I saw the wider community really discussing as pain points, really. So the changes are they added visuals when the Divine Light is fully charged, added Killer Instinct upon downs and near misses with a hittable projectile, increased distance at which the Divine Light is visible to survivors, and finally the Zealous's curve window is now a flat 0.3 seconds. Besides the Killer Instinct for near misses, was any of this really concerns that we had? Even that has a kind of an odd drawback to it, because with this toggle, they're not addressing the Heretic's Mark add-on, which is what this comes from. But there's a slight difference. I do want to say this here. There's a slight difference that the Heretic's Mark is 1 meter of detection if you nearly miss, and the base kit is 0.5. But that's not a lot at all. But they just left Heretic's Mark the way it is. They said, oh, okay, you can turn on the toggle, but you can also still run the add-on. Why would I run a full add-on slot for 0.5 extra Killer Instinct distance? Like, that's like, I don't know. That's 0.5 meter, not a lot. It is not a lot to run a full add-on slot for. So I'm really confused as to why they were very emphatically like, no, you can still run the add-on and the Killer Instinct base kit toggle at the same time. It's like that. Nobody's going to do that. Why would I do that? Why would anybody do that? The most concerning change I'd say they're making, though, is making the beam visible earlier in tandem with something else that we'll get to. They said they're ultimately making this change because streamers would be looking at chat and being funny and be hit without a chance to react. No, I'm not kidding. No, I'm not exaggerating. That was the primary reason they gave. Brother, you are playing an active player versus player video game. you should be paying attention? What is this logic? What would be the difference between this and like looking out of the periphery to look for like a ghost face or a Myers that's stalking you from afar? If you choose to be distracted while playing, 9 times out of 10, that's a decision that you're making. If you're getting more invested in your chat, you may not be fully locked into the game. That's just kind of how it goes. This is coming from a guy who has a cat that really loves to hop on the desk mid-game, block my entire screen, and I can't help that. And I'm still saying, hey, most of the time, you not paying attention is a you problem. So it feels like such a weird pain point to have, much less make a full change around. To make matters worse, they are even adding a vignette on the screen that warns you when the beam is coming your direction. This was already an ability you had by this wonderful magical thing that we mentioned earlier called paying attention. It's pretty cool. I will say they really aren't beating the hand-holding allegations that have been levied against them in recent years. You couldn't go any further with this update without having just a big, bright, red flashing dodge now on the screen than they could with this update. It's so goofy, and I'm really unsure where in their feedback that like this was something that was considered as important enough that it had to happen before release, that we had the big golden ring around your screen that says dodge now. Like, it feels almost as patronizing as like the good boy hooks back in the anti-everything changes. You know how I ragged on that for a big extent of the good boy points. You get the good boy hooks that when you hook somebody, they're gold to make sure you know you did a good job. This is kind of like that, except with hand holding to dodge the attack. It's like, dodge now, guys, dodge now. Don't worry. If you weren't paying attention for half a second, don't worry. You get to dodge now. It's like, okay, cool. It's not like this character, their whole spiel is, I send a beam and it hits people far away 90% of the time. It's almost like that's their whole power. So if you add a giant dodge now on the screen, that's kind of defeats the purpose of the entire thing this character's set out to do in their mission statement. That's kind of weird. I really don't get this. Like, if it's to stop the whole totem defense thing that has become a problem in Dead by Daylight in recent years, it doesn't really do that, because the problem with totem defense is that there's no cumulative progress. If you get knocked off, you have to restart all over again. It would be the same deal if somebody was using scream perks, scream add-ons, whatever, to knock people off the totems. It's not a new situation or unique to the Judgment. The Judgment just happens to be a little bit better at it. It feels like we're bending so many aspects of the game around the obvious elephant in the room that totems probably need looking at again when it comes to like where they spawn, how we deal with cleansing them, but we just keep kicking that can down the road and ergo hurting game design as a result until we finally decide to address that elephant in the room. Anyways, like I was saying earlier, this is something that I definitely think is not a good choice, because that, this is one of the few things that the character does well and has a very high skill expression to it. And I'm not sure why they're working so hard to cap this aspect of their power if this was like the whole design philosophy behind making the character in the first place. Is this not the character that you said, we want a killer that could theoretically stand in the middle of the map and pressure the survivors? Isn't this something that you said? But now that's bad. Now we don't want that. Now we need the dodge now on the screen at the same time. I don't know, man. I'm confused. I don't know what you want out of this character anymore. You might say it's the community character. It's what you wanted. No, once again, I said this in my last video. This power has gone through so many changes that we didn't vote on that it's basically behaviors killer now. Besides just like the aesthetics of it, which we did vote on, this really isn't our character anymore. They have changed it so many times that it's just kind of like a vague resemblance to what we voted for, not what we voted for. Now for the next part, I will admit I am not as much in the know about this and why this next change is not so great. So take this with a grain of salt. Apparently the 0.3 flat change to the Zealous version of the beam curbs the skill ceiling expression of the character. Revium has a tweet that explains it better than I can, but the TLDR is that the potential of the Zealous as a quote-unquote powered up status effect has been trimmed in exchange for more consistency, which kind of defeats the purpose of a higher end skillful character. Otherwise, I think overall I'm appreciative of the Killer Instinct additions and the visual feedback on the power being fully charged. However, the other changes seem like they just kind of threw darts randomly at a board, and doesn't really seem like they really took into account community concerns like they said they did. The whole prayer kneeler toggle discussion that has been, all the rage in the Dead by Daylight community wasn't even uttered. Or against. They just didn't bring it up. No discussion of the character's skill floor and if they are for that level of intensity or not. It's just like, it feels like they were so scared to address the big talking points of the community that they just kind of didn't. They didn't want to take a firm stance and agitate people, so they just omitted those points completely. which is what we probably wanted to hear the most. As a result, some changes were made, or lack thereof, that seem to kind of weirdly upset both sides. If you're, completely pro judgment, you're probably upset that your skill is being kind of capped a little bit. Your skill expression is being capped a little bit when it comes to the dodge now vignette and your zealous nerf. And anti-judgment people haven't had any of their concerns that they were worried about being addressed with can we get a toggle? Can we have at least some sort of more organic but not ruining barrier to entry to this character? It's kind of both sides ended up losing here, which is, I guess, a talent in its own right. I don't know how you managed to make both sides kind of with these changes today, but hey, good job, I guess. I almost moved on from the character. I almost forgot about this. They messed with the exile realm a bit. They're trying to make it, quote unquote, more threatening to be in the exiled realm by making the beams more aggressive. And they also made the hook timer penalty 3 seconds off of your hook state when you're hit by one of the beams instead of 1 second. In addition, your immunity after being hit before you can be hit again has now been lowered to 0.5 seconds. However, they also increased the distance between the pillars by 4 meters. The problem here is that I don't know if it was just a bad example. They showed a clip off in their actual stream where there's the player that was running around seemed to be able to dodge the beams fairly easily. They were basically fine for the most part. It was pretty easy breezy to go through the exile's realm, and it appeared to be because the way they were responding with the new 4 meter thing was making it so spaced out that you didn't really have to worry about it. Once again, I don't know if this is a bad example. It could be just presented poorly, but it looked like, despite all the cool stuff they added to make being in the exiled realm worse, the 4 meter thing made it pretty easy to dodge, which means all that stuff really wasn't coming into play. But, it sounded promising, but that other aspect of it may be messing with it a little bit. Either way, overall with the judgment section, the judgment changes, I'm pretty disappointed in this section. Like I said, it kind of feels like they were like, guys, we listened to feedback and we changed all these things, but it was none of the things people were really discussing or worried about. So I don't know where this feedback came from. And I heard that sentiment echoed by a lot of creators and people in the community today of going, yeah, I don't think I ever remember complaining about that or even hearing of somebody worry about that. So where did this feedback come from? I'm really confused. Anyways, moving on from the judgment section, they also talk about the anti-cheat situation. The good news is that Behavior is actually looking for a new anti-cheat program, which they've needed one direly for a really long time. If you play DBD, you know the game has quite a cheater problem. I would dare call it a cheater infestation. I had a Jason I faced today who was just kind of ignoring the anti-camp cooldown that he's supposed to get when he teleports back to hook and he's too close to it. And that person had multiple cheating bans on record. And when I asked them about this in the endgame, because I was like, well, that was really weird because I made a lot of decisions to unhook it, realistically, not great times, unless you're locked in that anti-camp for a really long time. And then they just didn't have it. They said, and I quote, "I don't know, it was tweaking," and didn't elaborate. Okay, let me know down in the comments below. Have you ever played Jason, teleported too close to hook, and instead of going through the long anti-camp animation that feels like you're moving at the speed of a slug, you got it tweaking instead? Let me know, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a report back on that. But even outside of weird situations like that, you know the deal. Gens going too fast, people running too fast, carrying an item that came out on an anniversary that technically you couldn't have gotten on that character because they came out way later, hyperfocus by itself. Man, that you're just so good at your skill checks, buddy. You know these things, have played games for years and years and years. However, they're going to be testing different anti-cheat services live with us over the next few weeks, so hopefully they find a new service that actually works well and finally puts the nail in the coffin for these rampant cheating problems. However, this comes with some negative caveats. First, the anti-cheat tests are only happening on Steam, which if you've been in the DBD community for more than 2 seconds, you know that a majority of cheaters are not on Steam. They've made most of their accounts somewhere else. So the main cheater player base will just not be a part of this, which is concerning. Another aspect of this that I found funny is that Behavior said that reporting in-game correctly is important to do if you actually want cheaters to be acted on. The part I agreed with was to be specific. You have to be specific about what actual cheating is happening. Don't just say cheating. Just don't just say hacking. Include that you think that there's speed hacking around the chase that you had at 3 gens. That way they can actually check that chase in particular. That's just one of many examples, but the funny part that I found with all this is they said, what would really help us is if you go and also file a support ticket and include footage and timestamp of when it happened in your game and all this stuff. And I'm like, hold on. Listen, it is your job to bust cheaters in this game, not mine. It is your job to keep the game as cheater-free as it possibly can be. Not mine. If you're going to ask me to put in this whole entire CSI investigation behind someone moving at 105% speed instead of 100 speed, you gotta pay me. You give me some blood points, maybe. That would be great. But I'm not doing all that when at the end of the day, that is your job. I also just don't think it's very realistic to expect players to launch a full documented investigation into one singular game that may have had an instance of cheating in it. It was just, I don't know. I also want to point this out too, that whether it came to either bugs or cheating instances, I used the support ticket system a lot back in the day before Beta Hub was around. And I can tell you that a ton of my tickets were just kind of quietly closed without any sort of resolution or feedback. So I sure hope that it's different now than it used to be. I have a whole can of worms that I won't open here because it's not part of this video, where that kind of happens with my Beta Hub stuff too. Whenever I submit a bug that's on Xenomorph to Beta Hub, it just kind of gets quietly closed and never fixed. So I guess Beta Hub has a lot of issues too, but like I said, it's a whole other can of worms. Also, another thing that I want to bring up before we move on from the anti-cheat thing is that they specifically said that if you use custom perk packs, you're safe, which is great, which is awesome. But another thing that they've, very famously whitelisted, that being reshade, was not talked about in this conversation. So, reshade might be going the way of the dodo. I think that may have been a very intentional omission. I think they think because they have gamma settings in the game now, that's okay. We don't need to whitelist reshade anymore. That's just tinfoil hat theory. I'm not just based on that intentional omission. That might be what's happening. I will say though, as somebody who had reshade, got off of reshade, decided to use the gamma settings, and because I was so dissatisfied with the gamma settings, I went back to reshade. If you're going to do that, you need a lot more customization. The brightness in the gamma settings it doesn't do a whole lot. It is helpful. It's better than nothing. But it's not even remotely on par with using reshade. This doesn't even include like saturation, sharpening, that sort of thing. So like, I would try to expand the settings that you have if that is your route that you're going to eventually make it to where reshade is no longer whitelisted. You got to expand that, because the game still looks like garbage if you're not using reshade. So you got to give us the tools in game instead of just sniping reshade. So just throwing that out there. Finally, moving on to the part that you've probably all been waiting for. The life balance update, because Vigil is dead. If you're unaware, after the initial Vigil nerf that's going to hit with the Course of Sin chapter drop, there's going to be a hotfix patch after that, where Vigil only affects exhaustion and only does so by 30%. No more broken, no more exposed, no more hemorrhage, no more hindered, no more mangled, no more oblivious. Boom! It's all gone. At least it will be when that hotfix patch hits. So many add-ons, so many perks, so many perk combos. They're back. They're just back as soon as this patch hits. Freddy and Clown, you're back on the menu because half your powers aren't being deleted by the mere existence of a single perk. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that amazing? Now, usually the mature response here is, well, I hate that they just gutted it instead of reworking it. That's pretty lame. But hey, honestly, it's still not that bad. It's still pretty good because anti-exhaustion in general is really good. Having your exhaustion perks, which are the strongest perks in the game, off cooldown more often is still good. You can still run this and it will still get you a lot of value. And B, the perk is free, dude. It's free. It has no prerequisite for yourself, and for others, it's just be near them, which is super easy to fulfill, and it deletes so much from the game with no cooldown. It should have never been this way to begin with, to be frank. And I will say this, as confidently as I can say this, if you're freaking out about Vigil's nerf, you're self-reporting. I've long theorized that in the past 2 or 3 years, the games community has slowly shifted to a majority group of players who generally don't really care for the gameplay of Dead by Daylight. They like showing up, going tick, 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 tick on a gen, and then escaping for as little effort as possible. I agree with what JC Glitchmaster said, that I think this crowd started to filter in during like the arrival of 2v8 and how we've brought it back over and over and over for a long time now. But overall, I've seen a more general vibe from the community that it's more about buying and showing off skins and then escaping with as little effort as possible. And if that's not met, I'm just DCing or going next. Like, that kind of community has kind of overtaken the game, and I run into them almost exclusively. Now, let me be absolutely clear about this. Going on a little bit of a tangent here. Not that I'm ever not known to do that. Let me be absolutely clear. If that description fits you, you're not welcome here. This is a fun game when it works and when it's moderately well balanced. We have people who make guides for characters, for looping, for tiles, for entire maps. People genuinely are so passionate for this game and love this game. If you're just here to squeeze out some easy W's and stiff arm the devs into accommodating for your easy peasy lazy playstyle, we don't want you in our game. Like, flat out, right? Just go find a different game to play. You are unhealthy for our community. You make the quality of our community and our game worse. Your influence hurts the experience for everyone, so I don't know, maybe Animal Crossing is more your speed, or Stardew Valley. Maybe you should give it a try. Anyways, that's not all that was in the live balance update. Nowhere to hide is now whenever you damage a gen for 5 seconds, you see the aura of anyone who is within 24 meters of that gen. I've seen a lot of killer mains complain about this, and honestly, this realistically will only hurt the top characters who honestly really don't need that extra info. We're talking like your blights, your nurses, like they're still dominating most of their games without having this like super precise, borderline unfair aura read every time they kick a generator. You don't need it. Yeah, it's similar thing with Vigil. We're gonna go, Nowhere to Hide is nowhere near on the level of unfairness that Vigil is, but like, if you've been crouching on Nowhere to Hide this whole time and you can't make ends meet on Nurse or Blight of all characters without Nowhere to Hide, you may be a little boosted. I'm sorry. Like, you will live without it, I promise. Repressed Alliance is also going to be in a better state because now it's going to only take 30 seconds to charge for 15 seconds of blocking once activated, which will make its presence more common throughout the match, which is pretty cool. Lastly, unfortunately, Elusive is not being ditched for the release. Elusive off hook is going to be kept in order to, quote unquote, better understand its impact, whatever the heck that means. I'm going to say this again because I say it every time Elusive comes up, just like Incapacitated back in the day. I feel like Elusive honestly was just a mistake in design when it came to a status effect. They've tried applying a base kit, they've tried adding it through perks, and those perks often were busted and needed immediate changes. Looking at you, cross-examination. I think it's time to throw in the towel. This status effect is problematic. My biggest fear, honestly, with this version of base kit that they're trying to apply with it is that the unhooker will unhook the guy, and then they'll go hide and immerse, but then you also can't go after the guy who was just hooked because now they're elusive. So you're just in this situation where they're cheesing you out of any sort of gameplay happening, period, and they didn't even necessarily do anything skillful. They just, while you were out of line of sight or like, 3 or 4 tiles over with, like I said, no line of sight, a guy unhooked and then hid, and then the other guy is not even attempting to hide, it's just elusive is covering for them. So despite the fact that you made no bad or unskillful decision as killer, you're just being robbed of the ability to do anything. And it all boils down to the fact that like it's a lack of gameplay. Like, it's like the two sides are not interacting, the two characters aren't even interacting with each other who are on the same team. It's just I unhook far away and then we both hide and we both profit. It's cheesy, it's not good, and I really wish they would give up on the status effect, but I guess we'll see, but I'm not optimistic. Finally, there was also a vague hint that Shoulder the Burden will also eventually be changed, which is the #1 free pressure evaporator. So that change will also eventually be much deserved like Vigil, but there's nothing specific on that yet. Finally, we have a new update on the new MMR system. Firstly, survivors will share MMR across all characters, which makes sense. However, they said killers will have individual MMR, but the way they described it also seems different than what we have now. I don't know if this was just like bad phrasing on their part, so I'm going to need your help with this. Currently, you have a base MMR in current DBD that is shared across all characters, and then you have this mild amount that gets raised or lowered based on the character that you pick. So you would have a flat MMR that's in the thousands probably, and then you have like a 300, I think it was, I haven't looked into this in a while, so forgive me if these numbers aren't accurate. You have like a 300 point modifier based on what character you pick. So if you're playing your main, you're probably going to get harder gains by 300, but if you're playing like somebody you never play, it goes down. However, the way they explained it, once again, they could have just explained it poorly, but it sounded like the inverse. Like, you have a character MMR that will be base and then it'll be modified by your general MMR. Give it a listen and you tell me, because I haven't seen anybody specifically talking about this, but I don't know if I missed something here, but maybe, like, I think it was just a lost in translation sort of thing. It's probably just the same, but it sounded like they were reversing it. The reason this would be a good thing if they did this is because that would be a dramatic change that would allow people to learn new characters with a little bit more leeway if, like, your character MMR is more dominant over your overall MMR, but that's just me. Furthermore, the big reveal is that kills and escapes are not the only thing that are going to be counted for MMR going up or down anymore. Instead, now the actions you take in-game will determine if you go up or down in MMR. I have long ragged on this game's MMR system when it was released back in the day, and how often they clung to it and then threw their hands up in the air and said, well, the game's too complicated. How can we possibly track everything to have a better MMR? It has to be this simple. If only there was some sort of emblem system that had different categories, and those categories actively tracked the actions that the players took inside the match, then spit out a result in the end. That'd be so cool if Dead by Daylight had something like that. Well, even though it took years to do so, these actions are in fact what will determine your new MMR going up or down match to match. If you escape but don't do any gens, unhook, or even chase, your MMR could go down because that's only the unbroken emblem actions. Conversely, if you don't escape, but you did a lot of gens, got a lot of hook saves, and had good chases, your MMR will still go up, since the Unbroken Emblem was the only emblem that you didn't have actions contributed to. This is a far better MMR system, considering that it will actually track good actions in the game and reward you for skillful actions based upon that. I still wish there was some sort of like actual tangible reward besides just more accurate matchmaking, but this will hopefully lead to less situations where clueless players are just getting through their MMR by playing selfishly and then end up in a place where you get hyper-focused stakeout built to last toolbox Timmy somehow facing like a 12k hour character because technically all they've done is just slam gens and leave. And that's all they know how to do. I will say there's two aspects to this though that mildly worry me. First, they teased a long time ago that this MMR update would be far more substantial than what they ended up revealing to us. They said it was going to be a reimagination of how the game is played and that aligns more with our values. But that's not what this is. It's literally just taking the aspects that should have always been tracked and then tracking them. That's it. I don't know if they wanted to do something more complex and it just fell through, but the way they sold it to us in a previous statement was like, you can play however you want and it's going to save the health of the game. And then it's just like, hey guys, the stuff that you've been telling us should be tracked for MMR for years. Yeah, we're just doing that now. And that's it. I don't know what that previous statement was about at all. Like I said, maybe there's something on the cutting room floor we don't know about, but compared to that statement, this is just a smidge of a letdown. Secondly, I do hope that regardless of the MMR becoming more accurate, I do hope it's not like too strict, because a good variety of match experiences is ideally what's best for the health of the game. This obviously depends on how they handle the brackets that you land in, but if mishandled, this could result in nothing but intense matches nonstop. I can't and probably can't find somebody outside of like comp or comp adjacent creators that would realistically want a sweat fest literally every single game that they play. There has to be some sort of middle ground where MMR is mostly accurate and mostly giving you people of the exact same skill level, but you got to have some games that are a little bit harder and some that are a little bit easier, you know, just a little bit of a rubber band to keep things a little fresh. It's also worth noting here that MMR will actually fully reset to kick off this new MMR system, which is going to be wild. The game is going to be the Wild West for a little while as that sorts itself out. I expect a lot of salt, anger, a lot of angry posts, but I think overall it'll be absolute fun chaos. Can't wait. Other than that, that is all for the Discord dev stream. Overall, if I had to give it a rating, 1 being a complete waste of time and 10 being the best update ever, I don't know, I'd give it like, honestly, actually really wasn't that bad. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. Which is, it sounds surprisingly high with all the caveats I had, but like Vigil being dead is huge and a long time coming. The other perk changes are also nice. MMR being based on actual skill instead of, just people playing as selfishly as possible to cheese the system is also a welcome change as long as they can nail it. A new anti-cheat system for the game could do wonders for making the game more enjoyable by weeding out all the cheaters if they can find one that works. However, I think that's about where like the harsh line in the sand is drawn, because I think the judgment changes are just like really odd and misguided, not really actually addressing any of the main issues that we had with the character before the live release, whether you were like super pro judgment or super anti judgment. It feels like the main conversation around the character just got completely ignored, which is kind of what we wanted to most hear about. I think the main concerns, unfortunately, about the character being low play rate and being passed over by most players will probably be the case on release if there's nothing else changed about this before it hits live on Tuesday. The other caveat to that is they're limiting your long range shots and capping your zealous. So it's not like the people who are all for judgment are also winning here in this scenario. So it's like, once again, how have you agitated both sides? That's a feat. I don't know how you did that, but good job, I guess. But how did you feel about the Discord DBD dev stream? Are you excited for the new changes coming, or are you worried for the future? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing today. It helps a lot. We just hit 16,000 on the channel, which is huge. I was like at 8,000 like a year or two ago. We are speeding through this. We are speed running. Maybe I'll get a plaque one day. That's a weird thought. Maybe we'll do it together. Either way, I'll see you in the next video. And if I don't see you there, I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye.